Hi, I'm Jaden, and this is my video for Chinese 160. I made pork mushroom dumplings. I live in the dorms, so I use one of the Sandberg kitchens, but it turns out they're very poorly equipped, which I wasn't expecting. Um, Aside from the pork and mushrooms, I put in some cilantro, green onions, ginger, sesame chili oil, and minced garlic. I didn't actually have a proper knife to work with, so I ended up needing to use a knife that I just happened to forget to take out of my backpack after camping in August. I'm very lucky that I was so forgetful because the alternative would be trying to use a butter knife, and I really didn't want to do that. Anyways, the knife that I was using still wasn't perfect. It was a really small blade, so a lot of my ingredients were really roughly cut and minced, and that definitely contributed to the texture, but I'll talk more about that later. It took way longer to cut stuff than it should have because I was using a tiny cutting board with that small knife, but it actually worked really well when I was peeling the ginger. I put my pork into a very small bowl and poured some of my sesame chili oil over the top, then dropped a couple spoonfuls of garlic in. Then it came the green onion, shiitake, and ginger. Using this bowl was really awful. It was very small, so I had to be super careful while mixing the ingredients up, because otherwise I'd spill a bunch of raw pork and everything all over the counter, and I didn't want to clean that later. I laid out all of my dumpling wrappers and got to work putting spoonfuls of pork into them. I learned very quickly that I should put in way less than I think I need to because otherwise they become very difficult to close. I tried a few techniques for closing the dumpling wrappers, but I was really bad at pleating the edges with my hands. So I ended up using a method that I'd seen used for pierogies, which is when you use the edge of a fork to sort of smush the edges of them together, and that worked very well. It was very consistent. Because I didn't have a large pot to work with either, boiling was also needlessly complex. I had to use two smaller pots, and I had to load in 6 dumplings at a time. I very carefully timed them because I didn't have a measuring cup to pour cold water over them, so I just had to boil them as they were for like 7-ish minutes just to be sure. But it worked. I spooned them out with a spatula, which was the only utensil I had to scoop anything with, and then I let them drain for a minute in a strainer. By the end of all this, I ended up with a lot more dumplings than one person could ever reasonably eat in a single sitting, but they came out shockingly well considering the lack of utensils and general roughness of the preparation. But there were a few larger chunks of ginger in there, and my lack of a big bowl to mix in meant that ingredients weren't all evenly distributed, so I ended up with very varied dumplings. Some of them were a lot more cilantro-y, and others had a lot more ginger, and I also didn't have a dipping sauce because I forgot about soy sauce somehow. So that sucked, but it didn't matter because they ended up being pretty good on their own. Honestly, despite the lack of utensils, I found it really fun. It was a fun challenge to cook with basically nothing to work with, but at the end, it all worked out. If I make dumplings again, and I'm fairly sure I will because I enjoyed this and I like dumplings, I would definitely be sure to have proper utensils, but honestly, that's just common sense. Turns out you shouldn't rely on a dorm kitchen to have cookware. Oh well. I'd also get my ingredients much earlier and cook much earlier. I was actually on the clock for this. I was pretty anxious the entire time because I wasn't sure I'd be able to get the dumplings done and then also write the script for this video and edit it all in time. But looking at the clock now, I made it with, a good while to spare. I'd also be sure to have soy sauce next time and just in general, maybe add a few more ingredients, spice it up a little. Spicy dumplings would be pretty good, but I'd also like to make shrimp dumplings, maybe. That'd be fun. Or, work with ingredients that I've never worked with before. Thanks for watching.